Good afternoon. I'm George Latimer, Westchester County Executive. It is Monday, May 4th, and this is our weekday daily 2 o'clock update on the coronavirus outbreak here in Westchester County. We're going to start with some of the numbers that represent the general status of how the virus outbreak has been occurring in Westchester County only. As of today, we have 30,097 positive cases of coronavirus year to date throughout the course of this contagion, which is roughly a 2-month period of time. However, because 24,000 of those individuals were tested positive 2 weeks or long ago, the difference between that gives us an active number of cases of 5,791. And that number has been continually dropping day after day after day for the last 25 days. That active case number was over 10,000 on Saturday, April 18th. So today on Monday, May 4th, we are down from 10,000 plus cases to 5,700 cases. We're approaching a 50% drop in the number of active cases as we see people who have gone through the 2-week incubation period of the virus as a subtraction off of the total number of positives. So 30,000 total positives tested, but 5,791 active cases. Clearly, we're past the point of flattening the curve. We are now on the downside of the bell curve that we've had. And I should point out that as we share information with the municipal governments and the press a little bit later today, the map that's going out, if it hasn't gone out already, it will start to track now, not just the total number of positives, but also the active number of cases by municipality. So you can see how many of the cases that have tested positive are still considered active within those different jurisdictions. Our hospitalization number today is down to 664 individuals. That's still a lot of individuals, but if you go back a number of days ago, a month ago or so, we had as many as 1,200 people that were hospitalized. 3 weeks ago, 1,200 people were hospitalized for COVID. That number is now down to 664, and it's been dropping day after day after day. Just a week ago, we were in the 800s, and now down to the 600s. So very good signs in both cases. We have certainly not taxed our healthcare system. That is no longer an issue of immediate concern for this wave of the virus. We have lost 1,101 individuals. And what we're seeing now is that we're losing less than 20 people a night. Every death is a tragedy. There's nothing to minimize it by the numbers. But if you go back a number of weeks ago, we had days where we lost 40 people and 50 people overnight. Last night to tonight to today, we lost 15 people, and it's been in the teens for the last 3 or 4 days. That number of deaths are starting to lower day after day after day, which is a good sign if the signage is that more people are surviving and getting through this terrible disease and going forward. That number, as it continues to drop, also reflects the fact that we have tested in Westchester County. We continue to have tested more on a percentage basis than any other jurisdiction. We have tested over 100,000 individuals. We were near that mark a couple of days ago when I last reported to you on Friday. We have now exceeded over 100,000 people tested for COVID, and that represents a 10% of our population. There's roughly 1 million people in Westchester County. We'll see what the next census tells us. But in rounded numbers, there's 1 million people, and we have tested 100,000 people, or 10% of the population. And testing is going on in a host of different contexts, even as we speak. We started out with in-home testing by the county health department, working alongside the state Department of Health officials. We graduated to having drive-through testing at Glen Island Park, which is still doing that function. Westchester Medical Center has taken on that responsibility. Now, all of the hospitals are taking on that responsibility. And now you're seeing a variety of other different settings where you can get a COVID test in local walk-up scenarios around our county and many of our urban settings. And that's getting us a higher sense of the number of people that actually are testing for this, so we can identify them, isolate them. Hopefully they work through their isolation and can rejoin the society thereafter and go forward to some degree with the rest of their lives. But the strategies that have been put in place are working. We're seeing the numbers drop, and they're dropping regardless of some of the other things that we have done in our recreation to open up our parks at a certain level to provide for exercise and mental health stability. We'll talk about that a little bit later. But in terms of the numbers continue to show progress, but we continue to lose people every night. So it's a very bittersweet type of situation that we deal with, looking at the fact that we have less people every day that are affected by this, but where we have impacts, they are significant. We've lost 3 of our first responders in Westchester County, 3 deaths, 1 in White Plains, 1 in New Rochelle, 1 in Mount Vernon, and they're all important people to us, people that have died during this crisis. Andy Dimaggio is a captain, also a county fire inspection, 31-year veteran of the New Rochelle Fire Department. We lost Andy. We lost Ed Shioka, who is a deputy chief, ready to retire at the end of this year. Stepson of Bill Ryan, a colleague of mine in the county legislature who served as chairman. He was a 35-year veteran of the White Plains Fire Department. And we also lost non-COVID deaths, but still a tragic loss, Michael LaSelva, who's the Mount Vernon Fire Department individual. These are people whose lives matter, and they gave of their service in their professional life to each of the rest of us in fighting fires. And now they've been lost to us through COVID. So every loss is critical. We decided a month ago to lower flags to half-mast. They remain at half-mast on county office buildings and county facilities in respect to Ed and to Michael and to Andy and to all the other people we've lost through COVID-related deaths. It is a tragedy. At the same time, the policies that we're pursuing are working. We're seeing a dropping in the number of those different cases. And as we start to share the community by community active cases, the net number of active cases, we think we're getting a better picture of just how widespread the contagion is and how many people are still in a position where they could communicate that disease through active infection of others. On the testing front, we alluded to this last week, but today began antibody testing at the Westchester County Center. That facility has been now created as a medical facility. There are hospital bed structures in there to take care of any overflow. We've not needed the overflow yet, but it's the perfect setting for us to have people from the Westchester Medical Center do the antibody testing. And we've targeted our first responders. We've begun with our county first responders from the Public Safety Department, which is our county police, the Corrections Department, Probation Department. Those are the first 3. We have a couple of other county departments that will go through this. They're out in public contact circumstances. We will then be working with our local governments to identify their first responders, police, fire, EMS, and so forth, that will also go through the antibody testing. This, by the way, is a voluntary test. It's not mandatory. An individual who serves this capacity does not have to go through this. If in fact they decide that they do go through this and they find out if they have the antibodies, then they, at their option, can then donate blood, which can be used as part of the treatment for those people that do have the disease. Excuse me. We have Susan Spear from our team is working to spearhead this activity, and we're very hopeful that the antibody testing will be the next level of our testing activity. We have now begun testing in nursing homes. Nursing homes are regulated by the state of New York, and prior to this arrangement that we've just agreed upon, the county had no direct role in nursing home management or oversight, but because of the massive need to get into the nursing homes and deal with the contagion in those settings, the state granted the county Department of Health the authority to go in and do testing beginning today for all patients. We're at Victoria Homes in Ossining today, I believe, and we're going to work our way through as many of these facilities as possible, testing all patients and trying to determine if those who have COVID and those who do not, and then out of that, decisions are made about how those patients are to be dealt with, whether to be housed, in what capacity to try to reduce the spread in our nursing homes. Nursing homes have accounted for a significant number of our fatalities. Obviously, people in the nursing homes have existing healthcare issues. That comorbidity creates a climate for the worst possible scenario for people fighting this disease. And advanced age has been the single demographic that links the vast majority of the people that have died from COVID. But as I mentioned earlier on, younger people have contracted it, and some number of them have died. Even if it's not a high percentage of the total, there are cases where that has happened. So we can't drop our guard and be arrogant about how healthy a person is just based on age. But nursing home testing is a very important part of what we're doing. That begins today, and there'll be an effort made across the board to deal with all of those different issues. We're also going to be dealing, frankly, with the question of contact tracing, which will be done through a private entity contracted to the state. It will not be the county having that responsibility directly. We will not be hiring the people. It'll be channeled through a particular mechanism that'll be announced a little later on. But antibody testing, dealing with nursing homes, and the contact tracing are critical tools for this next phase of the virus and how we intend to fight it. And certainly the county is going to work with the state in whatever issues they would like us to in terms of contact tracing. We've just finished a very beautiful spring weekend, and we probably will have more of them. It's put great stress on all of our local governments and Westchester County in dealing with the natural demand for people to be out of doors as the weather has turned much better. I think it's appropriate to compliment people in Westchester County. I think they've responded well for the social distancing and the mask requirements, understanding that it was not universally adhered to. There were many examples of people that didn't have masks and examples where people didn't have social distancing. Now, we focus, because we run the county park system, on the county parks. And we had compliance in some places. We had less compliance in other places. We have some hot spots that we addressed attention to. Other hot spots broke out in other parts of the county. And I think it really depends on where you were and when you were there. I spent a fair bit of time going, as I normally have, to many of our county parks over the weekend, see the conditions for myself. What I saw in general was compliance, but I saw examples of non-compliance. And now the questions are, how do we get everybody to comply short of writing tickets or arresting people? Because we need to have an agreement by the people of Westchester, as all across the state and the nation, that it is important for us to change our lifestyle, whether it's short-term or permanent, in order to deal with the spread and contagion. And I would tell you that I don't think that the automatic response is to shut everything down. There's a school of thought, and there are people out there watching this who believe that you shut everything down, you have no recreation available, you just tell people, here's what you better do, and you'd better do this. And you have people at the other end of the spectrum that said, I've been locked up for 5 weeks, I can't take it anymore, my business, my job, the economics of my life, I can't take it anymore, I want to open it up and let people who are vulnerable shelter themselves. And I want to go back to the life as I had back in February. And I would argue that neither of those two extremes makes the best sense. We're progressing by reducing the spread of the contagion by taking a middle ground route. And that middle ground route takes into account that people do need legitimate outlets for recreation. At the same time, that middle ground outlet does not let us open up movie theaters and bars where people will be packed together. You're going to start out, when you open some of these things up, of not getting the attendance that the operators would like to have. We've talked about the Playland situation. While we haven't made a final decision, we know that if we open up Playland for the enjoyment of people, we will not get the attendance that we need in order to make a viable go of it. We'll get a certain amount, but we won't get enough because people will decide on their own not to go to a public facility like that. And in certain ways, we can wind up losing just as much money by opening at the wrong time as we do by maintaining it being closed. Right now, Playland, our beaches, our pools are all part of an executive order by the governor that closes all such similar facilities around the state. So it's not a decision to be made by us day to day, although we're working as to what we want our strategies to be in terms of those 3 facilities should the order open up. We're also dealing with the potential for summer camps, which exist in Westchester County, and even more so in every one of our local governments. And many parents have their children in those summer camps for oftentimes 6 weeks, from the first week of July to the middle of August. But no decision has been made about how those organizations will be dealt with. We're certainly going to share this with you as we have these updates. If the governor is to make an announcement, we'll be prepared for it, and we'll go from there. But because I was out and about, it was a beautiful weekend. There was every reason for people to want to go out. To the greater extent, people showed judgment and restraint. If you saw people not showing a judgment and restraint, then that's certainly one of the examples out there that we have to work on. And we try to get better with each passing weekend as people understand just what kind of a depth of a problem we have. But because you may have seen people not following the rules, it does not mean that there was universal rejection of those rules. I found far more compliance than I found people that were objecting to it. And the focus of my attention certainly was county facilities, county parks particularly. But there could be social distancing on the main streets of every community. If you go down the main shopping districts of every single community, people are coming and going, and whether they have masks on or not, whether they socially distance or not, that's every bit as much a part of this challenge. In fact, I think there's been an overemphasis of what happens in our parks, not taking into account what happens in the main streets of our communities and in the areas where we have heavy residential dense population, where we have apartment buildings, and people on a beautiful day will naturally come out of those buildings. And certainly as it gets warmer, if they don't have air conditioning and they can't get to a public pool, they're going to be sweltering, and they're not going to want to sit in a room no matter how much somebody lectures them to do it. On the other hand, we can't have it happen sort of willy-nilly where everybody comes and it's a rugby scrum, and that will advance the contagion. I saw pictures in Central Park over the weekend that looked nothing like what I saw at Kensico Dam Plaza or the Playland Boardwalk, although some people interpreted what they saw to be that. And pretty clearly, what's happening on a beach in California, a beach in Florida, is much more significant and also much more likely to spread the contagion. So we are trying to find that middle ground that makes the greatest amount of sense, making sure that we have a degree of personal freedom, but also a degree of control of the virus. And it's very hard to be in the middle on these things because the people on either side who have absolute views are absolutely convinced that they have the right strategy. And it's only those of us who hear all of the voices of the society understand how divided we are over which is the right strategy. So we're going to proceed in the direction that we have. To that extent, we opened 2 more of our 6 golf courses this past weekend. That makes 4 open. 2 have not yet opened. And as we have checked for any complaints, we have heard no specific complaints about any of the 4 open golf courses relative to social distancing or behaviors that we think are problematic and spread the virus. I've already argued long since that golf is intrinsically a socially distancing sport and should not be viewed in any other light other than whether or not it requires people to be in contact when they play the sport. It does not, or in each other's close personal area, which it does not. And so we're now looking ahead to the 2 remaining courses to determine their status, and I'll certainly be happy to update you on that, most likely in tomorrow's report. We have as well efforts being made on a food distribution program to support the works of Feeding Westchester and to try to identify additional not-for-profits that can help in food distribution. We normally have people who are poor, and within their poverty, they're unable to get the food that they need to live on. There's a food stamp program, there's a variety of places that will hand out food to those in need. That group of people in need has exploded because of the number of people in unemployment. And while they're waiting to get an unemployment check, or while they're laid off of a job for which they can't claim unemployment, but they're out of work, they need to feed their family. And so we're working now on a food distribution plan that is more robust and more broadly structured. Hopefully that will be helpful. Our economic development team has been helping to assist small businesses in applying for federal programs. To this point, we believe we have at least 100 local businesses that we've directly assisted. And hopefully we'll find out over time how that assistance worked. Did they get some grant assistance and so forth? And if so, the work that was done by Bridget Gibbons and her team as contributory to that. And hopefully that will be a very positive situation. Just want to go back again to the issue of contact traces. I referenced it in passing. There is a link that will be put into our website. It reflects upon the positions that will be hired: contact tracers, community support specialists, and team supervisors. This is all done under the aegis of the state government. There'll be teams and structured for each of these different jobs. There is a group called the Public Consulting Group, will be screening candidates. Johns Hopkins is testing some of the applicants. Vital Strategies is doing the actual hiring, and all under the New York State aegis. So we are going to be moving forward on contact tracers. It's a very difficult job to do, and it will take some time before we can get all of those things done properly. But hopefully in all of these different issues, we're going to move forward, make some progress. This is a low, long, laborious process, and we recognize that we will not be beating this in a week or in a day, but our stamina and our ability to control and direct our efforts will do the best possible. So with that, I'm going to go to any questions on what we have. The numbers are still trending downward. We're doing some additional testing. We're trying to deal with all of these issues that arise because our society is completely readjusted because of this. And with that, whatever questions we have, we'll try to address them. Catherine Chaffee, our Director of Communications.
First, Martin Wilbur has 3 questions. I'll give you the first one. How do first responders get scheduled for a test? Is it through their department? And will they be sent to the county, or is there some other process?
All right. If you're a first responder in any of the municipalities of Westchester County, your department head, working through your mayor or town supervisor, should be in touch with Susan Spear from our office, our team, sspear@westchestergov.com. Ideally, it's done through the department head, fire chief, police chief, or the chief elected official, village, town, city manager for that jurisdiction. They contact Susan, they identify the number of individuals who've agreed to go through testing, and then a schedule is established. We will probably be completed with the county first responders over the course of this week, opening up next week for local municipal workers to respond. All the testing at this point is going to be done at the Westchester County Center, at the medical facility that's been established there. It's centrally located, easy for everybody to get to. It's done in partnership with Westchester Medical Center, and they will administer the tests, and they will process the lab results to the individual, so you know whether or not you've tested with proper antibodies through that type of testing.
Okay, the next question is, are healthcare workers included in the priority testing, and if so, what's the process for them to get involved?
Well, the health care workers within the county government are one of the targeted departments. So I mentioned the three that we're starting off with in law enforcement, public safety, corrections and probations, but the health department is one of those areas within county government. The other health workers throughout the county are also treated now for all purposes as first responders, but we are working through the municipal workers first. And so we'll see how we can interface the various medical professionals in the various institutions that they're in. Most hospitals, take care of their own workers in their hospitals. It's those that fall outside of that in the public health domain that we have to be responsible for. If an individual is interested, then they should contact us, Susan Spears, I've just indicated, and we'll figure out how to put them in the queue in some way for testing.
Okay, last question for Martin. When the test opens up to the general public, how will the process for sign-up work?
We haven't established that yet. We intend to go through the first responders. We think that'll take us another couple of weeks. And in the meantime, we're determining what priorities come that follow that and how we'll handle them. If there's a way to handle people from the public based on certain groups, organizations, type of employment, they may get priority, but we don't know yet. And so we have to work through that. We'll certainly, Martin, give you as much advance notice as we have once we've thought it through.
Okay. Next question comes from Mark Lambriello. Greenburgh Town Supervisor Paul Feiner has been pushing against the bicycle Sundays and posted photos saying it doesn't encourage social distancing. Have you spoken to the supervisor about his concerns? And are there plans to modify the route or process through the rest of the year?
Well, the supervisor and I are in complete disagreement. I think he's wrong, and I think the information that he has shared does not give an accurate picture of what happened on Bicycle Sunday. I was out there. I don't believe he was. He got pictures from secondhand sources. And I went up and down the route and I saw what I saw. Now, there are examples of individuals who didn't have masks, and there are examples of people who did cluster, but it was not permanent clustering, and it was not a permanent reality throughout most of the route. There was a News 12 story. You can see it online if you didn't see it in person. The reporter came out without us controlling her whereabouts, and she interviewed a group of people and did file photos. And you could see everybody that she spoke to and the people getting on the parkway all had masks on. So I think the photographs that I saw were unrepresentative. One of them represented a food kiosk that was not part of this. It was off grounds, and people were going there and calling that wasn't social distancing. Another thing was a photo taken at the intersection in which we stopped the traffic on the Bronx River Parkway, the pedestrian traffic, in order to let cars pass through. And whenever you stop to let cars pass through, you're stopping the flow of bicyclists and runners. So they stop for a moment, they queue up for a couple of minutes, and they get to go. And you take a picture right at that moment, and it looks like everybody stopped standing there talking, when in fact, they were waiting for traffic to be let through, which happens, periodically. So I think those are wrong. Look, Paul and I have a straight out disagreement on this. He is determined that he wants to go public with those disagreements. It's a free country. You can do what you want to do. I have pushed back, and I've said basically that I think right now, if you're a town supervisor, you work on the things that are in your domain. You have Route 119 in Greenburgh. You have Central Avenue in Greenburgh. You have Hartsdale Avenue in Greenburgh. Those are areas where people, on the very same weekend that we have Bicycle Sunday or golfing at our golf courses, we have people walking up and down. I could go out and I could say, look, there's no masks here. There's no social distancing there. And it's the responsibility of each town, city, and village government to enforce these laws or these directives from the governor in their own community. And I think what you have, frankly, is an effort to try to get headlines rather than to try to get progress done. Paul and a number of other people believe that you should not have parks open during this period of time. He flat out thinks that anything along those lines will spread the contagion. And I believe that's a misguided thought. And, I'm happy to disagree when I think I'm right and my critic is wrong, and I believe he's wrong. So he has a right to his opinion, but I think an objective analysis, people who were on Bicycle Sunday who comment, who didn't have a preconceived notion, they've all reported back that it was well managed and people were following the rules very well. And so we're going to continue to have it next Sunday. Now, if the situations do get out of control and it's objectively out of control, then we'll shut it down. And the same is true for different parks. But, I went to Playland over the weekend. I went to Kensico. Individuals comment and they say, oh my God, it's a mess here. And I went to see it wasn't a mess. It's a perception that a person has. Maybe it's your viewpoint. You stand in a certain venue and you look out and people look like they're standing next to each other. Some people commented, oh, it's terrible because I saw the number of cars that were parked in the parking lot. Well, you can have a lot of cars parked in the parking lot, but that doesn't mean on the grounds of Kensico Dam Plaza, which is huge, that everybody's automatically clustered. They can certainly separate over such a large area and be functional. So, I respect that people have different opinions. They're entitled to express their opinions. They're also entitled to be wrong. And in this case, I believe the criticism of Bicycle Sunday is dead wrong. And I think, frankly, it doesn't take into respect the willingness of Westchester people as the weeks progress to understand these things better each week and grow each week. Because I will assure you of this, if you do not have legitimate outlets for people to exercise, get some mental health, they will find those outlets one way or the other. And if you can provide them a legitimate place to go to walk through the woods, if they play around the golf, which I don't do, if they bicycle and so forth, and they can express that and have that release, then they're far more likely to follow the rules day by day of sheltering in place. But if you try to suppress it, it's like having a pipe that has too much pressure in the valve. And you're seeing it in other parts of the country. And I want to avoid that here in Westchester County. And I think our policies have proven that there's a reduction every single day, not over the last week, over the last month, in hospitalizations and in active cases. That proves that our keeping those parks open have not contributed to an increased spread. It hasn't. The statistics clearly don't prove it. So I think it's more a battle between ideology versus pragmatism. Next question.
Okay. Next question from Mark. You mentioned a remembrance for COVID-19 victims in a county park. Is that going to be a permanent memorial?
Well, we're certainly going to start with a program that will involve remembrance, ribbons of remembrance. I think we're just on the verge of announcing it probably tomorrow or the day after, most likely by Wednesday, Mark. We're looking at Lenoir Preserve as the location for it in Yonkers, and we're going to invite families to have ribbons that will remind them of their loved ones and keep a remembrance. How permanent it will be will depend on logistics and so forth, but we certainly intend during the extent of this contagion to have that park there as a place of remembrance for the individual's loss, as a place for contemplation, and to show respect for the fact that we've lost Westchester residents. We give you statistics because people want to hear them. We give you examples of policies to show you that we're trying to do the things that we think we can do to deal with this. But the human element of the loss of life is profound. That's why we lower the flags. That's why we mentioned certain individuals today, a few individuals in other days past, as we highlighted those that we've lost due to COVID, because there's a human element to this. And it's particularly difficult because the moment does not allow us to have traditional wakes or traditional memorial services as our religious traditions do. It doesn't allow for our Jewish brothers and sisters to have Shiva at someone's home. It doesn't allow for us to have a graveside funeral service or a service inside a church or a service inside a synagogue or a mosque. And these are things that we as humans value. There are symbolic things that matter to us. You can get married legally by the action of either a religious leader or by the signing of some legal documents. But the symbolism of a marriage is the celebration and the joy of that moment. When a baby is born and you have a party to celebrate the birth of that child, that's a human moment. The human moment of graduating from high school or college. And I've had, the luxury of almost every one of these things that we've talked about. And the graduation party, the feeling you get, the senior prom, if that's important to you in high school, and all of those things, these are lifetime memories. All of those are lost this spring. They're all lost. And they're part of what makes us human. It's not just survive, it's live. It's live as well as survive. And we can't do any of those services and ceremonies right now. So we're going to try to do the best we can. We're going to try to show some respect and some remembrance when all of this is over. And I hope there's a date specific when we can feel that it's over. It probably directly correlates to having a reliable vaccine and a reliable antiviral. And by the way, not fly-by-night stuff, not panaceas that don't actually work or only work in a few cases. Everybody is dying for the solution for this thing to be finished. We want it to be over, but only when we actually have from science that which guarantees us the right treatment. And when that comes, and when the society opens up, certainly if I'm in this position or in any, position of responsibility, I'm going to make sure that we have those celebrations. I'm going to make sure that the class of 2020 isn't forgotten. I'm going to make sure that the people that we lost were not forgotten. We're heading into Memorial Day. We've had some questions about how do you celebrate Memorial Day, and we've discussed with the state and how we might be able to have some version of Memorial Day services, not on the grand level that we generally have with parades lining the streets and big, big group gatherings, but at least something to maintain our respect to the veterans who died. They died in service to their country. We just can't ignore them. And similarly, we just can't ignore all these other people in our society who have had, something that marks them as being special, and now they're not with us. So hopefully we'll figure out how to do these things going forward. We're going to have a lot of challenges that will only begin once the contagion is seen as ending. We'll have a financial issue, dramatic, that we're going to have to deal with. We're working on our phase 2 of budget cuts at the county level to take us to the next level to deal with this budget gap. We're going to have a host of things that are going to change and not be like the way they were before. But we're going to work through them. We're going to work through them intelligently as best as we can. We're going to do that because we are Americans. We're good, solid, rational people. And if you didn't wear a mask this past weekend, we believe that you'll understand why it's important to wear a mask this coming weekend. And if you haven't made that extra step to help a senior citizen down the street and call them up, make sure they have some food, we'll remember to do that this week. And we'll get it right this time if we didn't get it right the last time. But we're going to try every day to do a better job day to day. Other questions?
Last question comes from Jay Sears. Will all nursing homes be tested by the county, and is this voluntary?
It's our intent, Jay, to test every nursing home in the county, every patient in every nursing home in the county. It's a pretty big task. And of course, the county DOH, Department of Health, is not as sized the way that the state DOH is, but the state could not implement this all across the state without the help of the local organization. So we're very happy to step in to do it, and that's our intent. And as I interpret it, it's not just nursing homes as a class, it also includes assisted living facilities. And I hope we can extend that to include senior citizen subsidized housing, perhaps even group homes, wherever there are a combination of people who are in some way, shape, or form part of the vulnerable population. We want to test them and find out if they do have COVID, if they don't have COVID, and do it as fast as we can. That's our intent, and that's what we hope to do to implement it across the board.
That was the last question.
That's our last question. Very good. Well, thank you for your time. We're a little over a half an hour. We're trying to keep you short. It may seem to some people very repetitious. I might touch on a topic today that I touched on last week, and I don't intend to just repeat these things, but we do think that some things matter, some things that we talked about prospectively are now actually being implemented, and hopefully tomorrow we'll have some things of substance to share with you again. But thank you for watching. George Latimer, Westchester County Executive. If you have time, we did an interview earlier today with Tom Gleason, our Commissioner Sheriff. You can watch that as on Facebook Live, and we hope that you stay safe, and we hope we'll see you tomorrow morning at 11 for the next Facebook Live. Have a good day.